It's a great pleasure to talk to again at the Swedish Institute on Belt and Road Initiative. So it's a pleasure talking to all of you about the future plan of Belt and Road Initiative, but also about Chinese high quality development. Because last year, at the third summit conferences on Belt and Road and international cooperation, Chinese President Xi Jinping just said that we will plan the next decade's Belt and Road Initiative, because we are just commemorating the 10th anniversary of the Belt and Road. And next decade, we will build a high quality Belt and Road project to some extent. So to some extent, the high quality Belt and Road project and China's high quality growth are going hand in hand in the same direction. So the high quality Belt and Road project are in accordance with Chinese government's its own high quality development strategy. To assess the success of this high quality development strategy, we have to pay more attention to Chinese government efforts to avoid so-called middle income countries trap, because according to World Bank analysis, some countries reaching a sort of middle income countries will meet a lot of obstacles. If they cannot overcome those obstacles, they cannot go upstairs to go to the upper grades, upper stage of the supply chain. So they may be trapped by the middle income country trap. So that's why Chinese government paid a lot of attention pushing forward Chinese scientific and technology innovations. Remember that in 2015, Chinese government worked out a plan called Made in China 2025. That was a 10 years plan for scientific and technology development. And we are ahead of this plan. So there is still 1 year for the Made in China 2025. But looking back to the realization of this plan of Made in China 2025, we have almost accomplished more than 85% of the target set in 2015. So we have already accomplished the plan. During the plan, there is a lot of targets, such as development of space science and technology. And in these sectors, China have made tremendous progress in space science and technology. We have landed a vehicle on the far side of the moon. Then our rocket has brought back those vehicles with moon soil. So Chinese scientists are analyzing moon soil in order to discover some real elements that could be useful on our planet. And we don't have on our planet, but we can use some new natural resources hidden in the moon. So that's a big advance in space science and space technology. Apart from these, we also made tremendous progress in renewable energy development. China today is the biggest producer of renewable energy. China's photovoltaic generation of electricity represents more than 38% of the global photovoltaic generation electricity. So it's a huge amount of electricity. That's why China can produce so much electric vehicles, because nowadays the electricity prices in China, I mean the renewable electricity prices produced by those renewable energies, either solar, wind, or hydrogen. In all these sectors, the prices of electricity goes down so much that they are cheaper than traditionally coal burning power stations. So that's why China can afford to produce so many electric vehicles because those consumers, those Chinese who buy those electric vehicles can run the car at 1/10 prices of the oil of because traditionally you have to run your car, so you have to make the full of your essence and so on and so forth. The prices today of the fuel goes for your vehicle. So today, if you run on electric vehicles, the fuel prices will go to the 1/10 of previous essence prices. So that's a tremendous change that can make the life of Chinese people much more sustainable. So that's how China is making those progress on renewable energy and electric vehicles. And I think that China is looking for partners along the Belt and Road countries. So nowadays, China is exporting this technology in many BRICS countries, for example, to Russia, to Brazil, probably to South Africa. And then we will try to help all these countries, those participating countries of the Belt and Road, to continue to improve their facilities, their infrastructures, including infrastructures with regard to electricity grid. Those, because you have to improve your grid in order to provide more cheaper and renewable electricity to your EV, and all these are part of the next decade Belt and Road projects. So that's something very important. On the other hand, China is looking for developing its own so-called new quality productive forces. So new quality productive forces means that we will upgrade on the level of the global supply chain. But it's not so easy, because we have to develop a traditional, we have to renovate classical traditional manufacturing sectors by introducing more digital technology, by introducing more industrial software, and that's a big challenge. So we will do these to improve and renovate current manufacturing equipment and machines, to make them more performant and to make them more efficient. On the other hand, to push up the new quality productive forces, you have to train more innovative talents. So in order to train more innovative talents, you have to work out a new mindset. So they will be able to improve the production procedure, and they will be able to even to provide new ideas and the new product to the market. All of these need time, all these need investment, investment in education, investment in improving your classical and traditional equipment and production instruments. So all these are very important steps that China is taking. And then China wanted to also to generate this kind of procedure, this kind of technology with other countries along Silk Road, Belt and Roads. But China's development model, such as a new quality model, has been blamed, criticized by a few Western medias, especially by some Western governments, because they blame Chinese government for subsidizing new renewable energy or EV. But we know that even the United States and European Union are also subsidizing those kind of sectors. So let's take an example of Biden administration. Since Biden came to power, so they have decided to pass a bill, to adopt a bill to provide a more subsidy, government subsidy to support their renewable energy and EV sectors, they have adopted a bill called anti-inflation bill. But the anti-inflation bill has nothing to do with inflation, but to subsidize the so-called key sectors. Those key sectors include renewable energy and EVs. They decided to use more than $1 trillion public finance to subsidize those kind of sectors. But so far, they don't make as much progress as China does. So only subsidy cannot push forward your innovation or your technology innovation. So and blame China. They said that China is using its overcapacity to influence other markets, the Western markets, European Union and the United States. That's why Biden administration decided to impose a 100% of tariffs against Chinese export of these vehicles. But so far, it's a symbolic because they don't need so many Chinese EVs. Last year, we have only exported a few tens of thousands of Chinese EVs to the United States. It's very limited. But recently, European Commission decided to impose also a tariff on Chinese export of vehicles, pretending that because Chinese exporting is overcapacity. But it's totally absurd because in economics, you don't have something related to export of overcapacity. If you look at automobile industry, many countries nowadays export their automobiles more than their domestic consumptions. Take the example of Germany, for example. 80% of German-made cars are devoted to export. And Japan also, more than 50% of Japan-made cars are devoted to export to the international market, not to Japanese market. So can we say that Japan and Germany is exporting their overcapacity? The same reason can be applied to, for example, Boeing or Airbus. So the huge majority of airplanes made by Boeing and Airbus are devoted to export to other countries, to the global market, not to the US market or only to European market. So it's totally absurd to see that if some country or some sector of a country export more than the domestic sale, the country is exporting its overcapacity. It's totally wrong. It's totally absurd. So in international trade, people talk about comparative advantage. China have an evident comparative advantage in producing EV, renewable energy. Why should those Western countries limit Chinese export of these vehicles to Europe or to the United States? So where are those pundits of free trade? And so for quite a long time, the Westerners are really disciples of free trade and liberalism. But nowadays, they are not as competitive as Chinese industries. They are pretending that China is unfair. So I cannot understand why those Westerners cannot play on the same ground as China does. So in the next decade, China will try to export those new quality growth model to more and more Belt and Road countries because we wanted to export our capacity, producing electric vehicles, production of renewable energies, so that all these countries can benefit from low price electricity, renewable and sustainable. And then if you can produce electricity cheaply, so you can provide your EVs, your electric vehicles with cheap electricity, and that will be compatible with your long-term development that will meet your demands of carbon emission reduction. So all these are in the project of next decades of Belt and Road. I think that we have a lot of common interests and common ground in the next decades alongside Belt and Road project. Thank you.